The transcendental philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "We will have Mexico, but as the man who drinks arsenic, in time Mexico will poison us." No truer words could have been spoken, as the cause of the Civil War had a great deal to do with the division of the land that came out of the Mexican War, otherwise known as the Mexican Cession. Now, going back to the beginning of that war, all right, there was a boundary dispute between Texas and Mexico over what exactly was the southern and western border of the Republic of Texas. Now, the Mexicans claimed that the Rio Grande border had been essentially extorted out of Santa Anna de Lopez, the president of Mexico, under duress. So, therefore, the border was not a legitimate border. Until the Texas Revolution, the southern boundary of the Mexican province of Tejas had always been the Nueces River. Now the Texans claimed the Rio Grande. Now that left a considerable amount of disputed territory between the two rivers. Now President Polk did not want to fight Mexico over this territory. What he wanted to do was buy it from her. So he dispatched an emissary, a fellow by the name of John Slidell, to go to Mexico City and negotiate with the Mexican government. Unfortunately, the Mexican government was having none of it and refused to even consider Slidell's offer to purchase the disputed territory. Growing increasingly frustrated at Mexico's intransigence, President Polk dispatched Zachary Taylor and a considerable body of American troops from their base at Corpus Christi along the Nueces River to the border of the Rio Grande. Zachary Taylor took up a provocative position directly across the river from the Mexican town of Matamoros and placed himself in a position to blockade the Rio Grande River. Now, back in Washington, President Polk was meeting with his cabinet to discuss the possibility of war with Mexico. While the cabinet generally supported the president on the issue of war with Mexico, they would feel much better if Mexico had committed some overt act. At about this time, word reached Washington that a skirmish had taken place between American troops and Mexican troops north of the Rio Grande border. At that point, the issue was now decided. American blood had been shed on American soil, and now President Polk had all he needed to get his war with Mexico. Okay, now Abraham Lincoln enters the story as a minor player. Now, Abraham Lincoln was in an unusual situation in 1846. He was elected to Congress, but he wasn't really elected to Congress on his own. He and two other fellow Whigs together were able to hold on to a seat that probably should have gone to a Democrat. But these three individuals were three very popular, very charismatic individuals, had significant political following, and therefore, by rotating through the office, by two of them supporting the one and vice versa, they were able to hold on to a seat that they probably shouldn't have been able to win, any of them outright. Now, another complication for Abraham Lincoln was the fact that he was a Whig and therefore against the Mexican War. But he came from Illinois, a western state, which generally favored the Mexican War and expansion. Now, in order for Lincoln to hold his seat for the Whig Party, he was going to have to play this Mexican War business very carefully. He did not. It cost the Whigs the seat in Congress, and it almost cost Abraham Lincoln his political career. In December of 1847, in an effort to speak out against the Mexican War, Abraham Lincoln introduced into Congress a series of resolutions that came to be known as the Spot Resolutions. He was essentially questioning the very nature of the cause of the war and was not convinced that, as Polk had said in 1846, American blood had been shed on American soil. The first resolution stated, "Whether the spot on which the blood of our citizens was shed was or was not within the territory of Spain, at least after the Treaty of 1819 until the Mexican Revolution." Now, in 1819, the United States made a deal with Spain. In exchange for Florida, we ceded to them our claim to what would become Texas. The second resolution reads, whether that spot is or is not within the territory which was wrested from Spain by the revolutionary government of Mexico. What Abraham Lincoln was trying to demonstrate was that the spot upon which American blood had been shed was not necessarily part of the United States, but was within territory that had been in dispute since Texas's War of Independence with Mexico. A dispute that President Polk had been unable to resolve peacefully. The Lincoln Spot resolutions drew a significant amount of attention. They were never actually debated in Congress, and they were certainly never passed. As a matter of fact, Lincoln pursued these resolutions so vigorously that his colleagues took to calling him Spotty Lincoln, who suffered from spotty fever. Now, Lincoln took a moral stand on the Mexican War with his spot resolutions, but it cost him terribly. He lost the seat for the Whig Party in Illinois, and for the most part he was politically sidelined until 1854 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act.